Nobody at the front desk could communicate with the wealthy Japanese visitor until the African-American janitor spoke to her in fluent Japanese. "This Oriental guest has been causing chaos at our front desk for more than 40 minutes, shouted Sandra Morrison, the Grand Plaza Hotel's luxury establishment manager, making exaggerated gestures while three expert interpreters exchanged looks of complete hopelessness. The Japanese business mogul Akiko Tanaka stood perfectly still like a stone sculpture, her gaze expressing an intense blend of mounting irritation and disdain. Her personal aide was urgently texting on his mobile device, likely postponing multi-million-dollar business meetings that required this particular lodging arrangement. Near the lobby entrance, Denise Washington quietly mopped the Italian marble flooring, observing every detail of the humiliating spectacle that had been playing out for nearly 60 minutes. At 32 years old, she had mastered the art of remaining virtually unnoticed during her 6-year tenure as a custodial worker at this upscale hotel. "Mr. Martinez, find someone else," Sandra commanded the concierge, who was already visibly perspiring. "This predicament is becoming a global embarrassment." The third interpreter, an expert in Oriental languages, shook his head in surrender. "She doesn't communicate in Mandarin, Korean, or Thai. I've attempted everything, yet she simply disregards us as though we were transparent." Denise paused her floor scrubbing momentarily, gazing at the Japanese executive with an inscrutable look. Something in her expression revealed a profound comprehension that nobody else in the reception vicinity appeared to have, as though she alone truly grasped what was transpiring. Sandra Morrison walked back and forth, her costly high heels clicking forcefully on the surface Denise had recently cleaned. "If we cannot resolve this within 15 minutes, I must cancel the presidential suite booking. Consider the monetary damage to the establishment." "Mrs. Tanaka controls one of the planet's largest technology corporations," the junior desk clerk murmured to his co-worker. "Should she depart unsatisfied, our global standing will be destroyed." The Japanese woman finally voiced her thoughts, speaking rapidly in her mother tongue while gesturing with refined grace. The interpreters looked at one another, entirely bewildered, while Sandra Morrison displayed her eyes with increasingly visible frustration. At this point, Denise slowly rose, placing the cleaning rag beside the container. Her actions were deliberate and exact, like someone who had reached a crucial conclusion after thoroughly watching the entire degrading scenario. For years, she had observed numerous similar incidents in this privileged setting, consistently staying quiet while influential individuals mistreated less fortunate staff members. However, this occasion was different, as something unique sparkled in her resolute stare. What nobody in that opulent lobby could have anticipated was that Denise Washington possessed a secret significant enough to transform the diplomatic emergency into something entirely unforeseen, and her involvement would initiate a chain of occurrences that would permanently alter the authority structure of that establishment. If you find this tale of triumph over adversity engaging and wonder what remarkable secret Denise conceals, remember to subscribe to the channel to discover how an ordinary custodial worker is about to revolutionize this hotel. "My tolerance has reached its limit," Sandra Morrison struck her fist against the marble surface, causing all staff members to flinch. "That Oriental woman is making my establishment an international laughingstock." Akiko Tanaka maintained her composure and remained unmoved, but Denise observed how her hands clenched subtly with each disrespectful comment. The executive clearly comprehended far more English than she revealed. Her facial expression showed not merely linguistic disappointment, but profound outrage at the discourteous treatment she was receiving. "Miss Morrison," the desk clerk interrupted anxiously. "Maybe we should attempt to more what?" Sandra whirled around, her gaze blazing with fury. "I've already squandered 2 hours of my agenda on this absurd circumstance. If she cannot express herself in English, she shouldn't be lodging at a world-class American establishment." Denise experienced a recognizable burning feeling in her torso, the identical sensation she felt whenever she observed this type of arrogance disguised as professionalism. Her grip tightened around the mop handle, recalling numerous comparable situations where wealthy patrons had treated her like furniture. The manager persisted with her outburst, now making dramatic gestures toward the small gathering of spectators that had assembled in the lobby. "Observe this, one of the hotel's most costly suites, reserved by someone who cannot even request an additional towel." "Sandra, please speak more quietly," the concierge whispered, embarrassed by the public display unfolding. But Sandra Morrison was entirely out of control, driven by the pride of someone who had never experienced genuine repercussions for her conduct. "No, enough political correctness. This is an American business, and if individuals desire our premium services, they should minimally speak our language." This triggered a vivid memory for Denise of her own situation several years prior. She had been unjustly terminated from her former position at a cleaning service for defending a Hispanic colleague who was being humiliated for not speaking flawless English. The painful irony was that Denise spoke 5 languages fluently, a talent she had developed during her years as a volunteer translator for humanitarian organizations, a background she had intentionally concealed to secure this basic job when she was desperate. "Perhaps we should contact security," Sandra suggested with deliberate malice, observing Akiko Tanaka as if she were an unwanted trespasser. "If she cannot communicate adequately, she obviously doesn't belong in this establishment." The veiled intimidation resonated throughout the lobby, creating uncomfortable murmurs among the witnesses. Akiko Tanaka raised her chin slightly, her bearing displaying an unbreakable dignity that contrasted sharply with the crudeness of the situation. Denise watched with increasing outrage, remembering how she had acquired Japanese during 2 years volunteering at a community center serving Asian immigrants. She had dedicated entire evenings studying not only the language but also cultural nuances, motivated by genuine enthusiasm to assist people facing obstacles similar to those she knew intimately. "You know what truly infuriates me?" Sandra continued her toxic display, now clearly performing for the observing guests. "It's this expectation that we must accommodate them when they should be making efforts to integrate into our culture." Akiko Tanaka's assistant finally lost his composure and began speaking rapidly in Japanese to his employer, gesturing toward the exit. It was apparent they were contemplating canceling the reservation and seeking alternative accommodation, which would represent a disastrous financial loss and international scandal for the Grand Plaza. Denise felt something shifting within her. It was no longer merely passive outrage, but a growing resolve she had learned to develop over years of confronting prejudice in various environments. Her eyes briefly met Akiko Tanaka's, and for an almost invisible moment, both women shared a wordless understanding of what was truly occurring in that lobby. The Japanese executive whispered something to her assistant, who immediately began typing on his device, probably canceling not only the hotel booking but also the $1 million agreements her corporation was negotiating with American partners located in the city. Sandra Morrison, completely unaware of the financial implications of her ignorance, continued her exhibition of intolerance, oblivious that every arrogant statement was being mentally recorded by Denise, a woman who had discovered that sometimes genuine strength reveals itself precisely when others anticipate our surrender. As the pressure in the lobby reached a breaking point and Sandra Morrison prepared for her next public humiliation, something remarkable began to emerge in Denise Washington's expression. It wasn't defeat or terror, but the type of quiet resolve that develops when someone finally determines that the moment has arrived to transform years of injustice into a lesson nobody would ever forget. Denise Washington had reached her decision. She quietly placed the cleaning cloth on the cart and approached with deliberate steps toward the group surrounding Akiko Tanaka. Her movements were purposeful, like someone who had mentally rehearsed this moment for years. "Pardon me," she said gently, speaking directly to the Japanese businesswoman. Her tone was soft, yet something in her voice made several people turn their heads. Sandra Morrison spun around, her eyes flashing with complete outrage. "Excuse me, you're disrupting a crucial customer service situation. Return to your tasks immediately." But Denise kept her gaze fixed on Akiko Tanaka. In flawless Japanese with a Kyoto dialect that demonstrated years of intensive cultural study, she said softly, "Tanaka-san, gomen nazai. Kono una shitsure. Anatamari wa okiakusama desu." The quiet that ensued was overwhelming. Akiko Tanaka blinked repeatedly as if unable to comprehend what she had just heard. Her demeanor transformed entirely, from frustration to genuine relief, then to deep curiosity as she observed this black woman speaking her language with a mastery that few foreigners could achieve. "Anata wa nihongo wo hanashimasu ka?" asked Akiko, her voice revealing her complete amazement. She wanted to understand how Denise could speak Japanese so expertly. "Hi, sukoshi dekimasu," replied Denise humbly, claiming she spoke only a little, though it was clear her proficiency extended far beyond basics. Sandra Morrison was completely frozen, her mouth agape in total shock. The professional interpreters exchanged embarrassed glances, realizing that an ordinary cleaning lady had accomplished in moments what they had failed to achieve in hours. "That's impossible," Sandra finally recovered her voice, but now there was a hint of panic in it. You can't just, how can a cleaning lady?" Akiko Tanaka silenced Sandra with an elegant hand gesture, addressing Denise again in Japanese. "Doko de nihongo wo naremashita ka? Totimo itsukushi hatsuan desu ni." Denise smiled discreetly. The businesswoman was inquiring where she had learned Japanese, complimenting her pronunciation as very beautiful. Kyoto no daigaku de benkyu shimashita. Mata, Nihon no bunka ga daisuki desu. Her response that she had studied at a Kyoto university and loved Japanese culture made Akiko's eyes brighten. It was evident that Denise not only spoke the language but also deeply understood cultural subtleties. Sandra Morrison was experiencing what could only be described as a live nervous breakdown. This cannot be occurring. You're a custodial worker. You're not even supposed to converse with guests. At this moment, Marcus Johnson, the senior concierge and the only other black employee in a management role at the hotel, approached discreetly. He had been observing the entire scene, and his expression revealed a combination of admiration and genuine concern for Denise. Miss Morrison, Marcus intervened diplomatically. Perhaps we should allow the situation to resolve naturally. Our guest appears to finally be receiving appropriate attention. Attention from a cleaning lady. Sandra was completely losing her professional composure. Marcus, are you witnessing this? This individual is creating an international scandal. Akiko Tanaka, who had understood every English word, looked at Sandra with a frigid expression that made the surrounding air seem colder. In clear, precise English with only a slight accent, she said, "The only individual creating a scandal here is you, miss." The shock was immediate and devastating. Sandra Morrison staggered as if she had been physically struck. You spoke English the entire time." "Fluently," Akiko confirmed, her voice filled with controlled contempt, "and I comprehend perfectly every racist and xenophobic insult that has emerged from your mouth for the past 2 hours." Understanding began spreading through the lobby like shock waves. Guests who had witnessed the public humiliation began whispering among themselves, their expressions gradually shifting from embarrassment to outrage at Sandra's behavior. Marcus Johnson stepped forward, discreetly positioning himself beside Denise. "Miss Washington," he said formally, using her surname for the first time in years. "I appreciate your assistance in this delicate situation." Denise nodded respectfully, but there was something new in her eyes, no longer the resignation of someone accustomed to being invisible, but the quiet determination of someone who had finally decided it was time to be seen for who she truly was. "Tanaka-san," Denise continued in Japanese, "if you'll permit me, I'd like to clarify a few misunderstandings regarding your reservation. I believe we can resolve everything quickly." Akiko nodded with genuine gratitude, but also with growing curiosity about this extraordinary woman who had emerged from the shadows just when she needed her most. Sandra Morrison, realizing she had completely lost control of the situation, desperately attempted to regain her authority. "Denise Washington, you are officially suspended. Leave your duties immediately." The threat echoed through the lobby, but this time it didn't achieve the desired effect. Denise looked directly at Sandra, and everyone present could see something changing in real time. It wasn't fear or submission, but the kind of quiet power that emerges when someone finally decides to stop hiding who they really are. "I understand perfectly, Miss Morrison," Denise replied with a calmness that bordered on supernatural. "But before I depart, I would like to ensure that our guest receives the respect she deserves." What Sandra Morrison couldn't perceive, blinded by her arrogance and prejudice, was that every disrespectful word, every discriminatory gesture had been carefully observed not only by Denise, but by Akiko Tanaka, a woman whose international influence could transform that prosperous hotel into ancient history with a single phone call. As the tension in the lobby reached a critical point and Sandra Morrison prepared to escalate her campaign of humiliation even further, something extraordinary began forming in the atmosphere. It wasn't merely an employee defending a guest, but the beginning of a transformation that would reveal the true character of every person present at that decisive moment, proving that sometimes the most powerful individual in the room is the one everyone has chosen to ignore. The Grand Plaza lobby had become a theater where Sandra Morrison was about to discover that she had selected the wrong opponents for her display of prejudice and arrogance. Akiko Tanaka elegantly retrieved her phone, activating the recorder that had been running discreetly throughout the public humiliation. "Miss Morrison," she said in an icy voice, "I would like to clarify several things about my identity before this conversation concludes." Sandra was visibly panicking, her face alternating between red with anger and white with growing terror. I don't comprehend what's happening here. This situation is completely uncontrolled." "My complete name is Akiko Tanaka, CEO of Tanaka Technology International," the businesswoman continued, her voice resonating through the now completely silent lobby. "Our corporation has corporate hosting agreements worth $12 million annually with American hotel chains." The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus Johnson, the senior concierge, closed his eyes momentarily, recognizing the magnitude of the catastrophe Sandra had created. The other employees looked at each other with expressions of growing horror. Furthermore, Akiko continued relentlessly, I am a member of the International Tourism Board that certifies establishments for Asian executive guests. A negative recommendation from me could result in the cancellation of contracts worth tens of millions of dollars annually. Sandra Morrison began trembling visibly, finally realizing that she was not dealing with an ordinary tourist, but with someone who possessed enough power to completely destroy the hotel's reputation with a single decision. But more importantly, Akiko raised her voice slightly, ensuring that everyone in the lobby could hear clearly, is that for the past 2 hours, I have recorded every prejudiced word, every discriminatory gesture, and every display of xenophobia that has come from your mouth. That cannot be legal, Sandra stammered desperately. You cannot record conversations without consent. Marcus Johnson stepped forward, his voice professional but firm. Actually, Miss Morrison, in public areas such as the hotel lobby, there is no legal expectation of privacy. All of our security cameras also recorded the entire incident. The realization struck Sandra like a devastating tsunami. Not only had her words been recorded, but they had also been filmed by the hotel's own security system, creating irrefutable evidence of her discriminatory conduct. Akiko Tanaka tapped her phone screen with precise movements. I have already sent copies of this recording to the tourism boards of 4 countries, to the national management of this hotel chain, and to my public relations team in Tokyo. No. Sandra practically screamed, completely losing her professional composure. You cannot destroy my career because of a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding. Denise Washington finally spoke, her voice laden with an authority no one in the hotel had heard before. Miss Morrison, I have worked at this hotel for 6 years and witnessed countless similar situations. The difference is that today your victim had the power to defend herself. Akiko nodded respectfully to Denise before continuing her devastating counterattack. Ms. Washington, I would like you to know that I took the liberty of researching your professional background while observing the situation unfold. Sandra Morrison appeared to be having a complete nervous breakdown, realizing that she had completely lost control of the situation, and that every second that passed only worsened her position. I discovered that you have a degree in linguistics with a specialization in Asian cultures, have worked as a volunteer interpreter for humanitarian organizations, and are fluent in 5 languages, Akiko continued, addressing Denise with genuine respect. You are exactly the type of professional my company is seeking to expand our American operations. The shock on the faces of all the employees present was instantaneous. For years, Denise had been treated as disposable labor, when in fact, she possessed qualifications that most hotel managers could only dream of having. Marcus Johnson looked at Sandra with an expression that mixed disbelief and deep professional disappointment. Miss Morrison, not only did you humiliate one of our most important guests, but you also wasted an exceptional talent that was right under our noses. Sandra was now completely desperate, trying to find some way to save her ruined career. I can explain. It was a stressful moment. I didn't mean to. You meant exactly what you said, Akiko interrupted her coldly. And thanks to modern technology, your true opinions about people you consider different are now permanently documented. Sandra's phone began ringing insistently. It was clearly her superior supervisor, probably already aware of the international catastrophe she had created. Her hands were shaking so badly that she could barely answer the call. Hello? Her voice came out as a strangled whisper. Yes, Mr. Davidson. I can explain. No, sir. I didn't know she was. While Sandra desperately tried to justify herself on the phone, Akiko turned to Denise with a proposal that would completely change her life. Ms. Washington, I would like to offer you a position as coordinator of intercultural relations at our American branch. The starting salary would be $90,000 a year, plus full benefits. The silence in the lobby was absolute. Denise had gone from invisible cleaning lady to international executive in a matter of hours, all because she had the courage to do the right thing at the right time. Sandra Morrison hung up the phone, her face completely pale. I've been fired, she announced to the empty lobby, her voice breaking. Fired for cause. I'll never be able to work in the hotel industry again. Justice had been served in a complete and devastating way. Sandra had lost not only her job but also her professional reputation, her references, and any possibility of continuing her career in her chosen field. Meanwhile, Denise was finally being recognized for the exceptional talent she had always possessed. As Sandra Morrison gathered her belongings under the contemptuous glances of the same colleagues who had once admired her, a single question hung in the tense air of that transformed lobby. Was it possible that a single act of courage and dignity could completely rewrite the rules of power and respect that had governed that environment for decades? Proving that sometimes true revolution begins with someone who simply refuses to remain invisible when they witness injustice. 6 months later, Denise Washington sat in her office on the executive floor of Tanaka Technology International, looking out the panoramic windows at the spectacular view of the city she had once known only from the perspective of someone cleaning bathrooms and hallways. Her transformation had been complete and inspiring. As coordinator of intercultural relations, she had already implemented diversity programs at 12 partner companies, built commercial bridges between previously marginalized communities and the corporate world, and developed cultural training protocols that became a national benchmark. Denise, the meeting with the Japanese executives is confirmed for 3 o'clock, announced her assistant, Marcus Johnson, who had left the Grand Plaza to work as her right-hand man at the new company. The partnership between them had proven extraordinary, two people who deeply understood the value of recognizing hidden talent. Perfect, Marcus. And how's our new intern? Denise asked, referring to a young Latina she had discovered working as a maid at another hotel, speaking 4 languages fluently but being completely ignored by management. She's thriving beyond all expectations, Marcus smiled. Just as you predicted she would. At that very moment, across town, Sandra Morrison sat in a small rundown apartment, flipping through newspapers in search of any job opportunity. Her dismissal from the Grand Plaza had become a national scandal after Akiko Tanaka released recordings of her discriminatory conduct. Sandra's reputation had been completely destroyed. No prestigious hotel would even consider her resume. Her family had distanced themselves after the public exposure of her prejudices, and she had lost not only her career but also her social and financial identity. Social media continued to regularly remind her of her xenophobic comments, turning her into a national symbol of how prejudice and arrogance can destroy a life in a matter of hours. Every attempt to rebuild her professional image was hampered by the viral video documenting her complete humiliation. Meanwhile, the Grand Plaza had undergone a complete cultural revolution. The new management, aware of the international scandal that had nearly destroyed the hotel's reputation, implemented rigorous diversity and inclusion programs, mandatory cultural sensitivity training, and promotion policies based solely on merit and competence. Akiko Tanaka had become not only a regular guest but also a minority investor in the hotel, ensuring that the changes were permanent and meaningful. Her influence had transformed the Grand Plaza into a national model of inclusive and respectful hospitality. You know what makes me most proud about this whole story? Akiko remarked during lunch with Denise at her favorite Japanese restaurant. It wasn't just helping you find your true place in the world, but proving that when we recognize and value genuine diversity, everyone wins. Denise nodded, remembering that decisive moment in the hotel lobby when she decided she would no longer remain invisible in the face of injustice. For years, I believed that my education and skills were worthless because the people around me refused to see them. I discovered that the problem was never with me. And Sandra Morrison? Akiko asked with genuine curiosity, without malice. I hear she's working as a department store clerk, Denise replied without cruel satisfaction. I sincerely hope she learned something valuable about respect and humility. True justice is not about destroying people, but about creating opportunities for everyone to grow. That afternoon, as Denise led a video conference with executives from 5 different countries, translating and mediating multi-million-dollar negotiations with the same ease with which she had once cleaned marble floors, she reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought her there. Her story had become an inspiration to thousands of people through social media, documentaries, and motivational speeches, not as a tale of cruel revenge, but as proof that true power lies in recognizing our own worth, regardless of the opinions of others. The most powerful lesson Denise had learned and now shared with audiences around the world was that the best response to prejudice is not hatred or bitterness, but unquestionable excellence that forces even the most skeptical to recognize the truth. Sandra Morrison had tried to humiliate her, diminish her, and make her invisible. But she ended up creating the exact circumstances that allowed Denise to shine with an intensity she would never have discovered under normal conditions. Sometimes our greatest enemies do us the unwitting favor of showing us our true strength. Today, while Denise Washington leads one of the most successful divisions of an international company, Sandra Morrison lives with the lasting consequences of confusing temporary social status with real human value, proving that in the end, true victory does not lie in destroying those who harm us, but in building something so extraordinary that it renders any attempt to diminish our greatness irrelevant. If this story of transformation and justice touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and share it with someone who needs to be reminded that their value does not depend on the recognition of others, but on the courage to show the world who they really are when no one else believes in their potential.